I would do my schooling, which was 3 hours with a tutor. Then right after that, I'd go to the recording studio and record, and I'd record for hours and hours till it's time to go to sleep.
Michael Jackson's final recording session for Earth Song started like any other. But when he asked his engineer to kill all the lights, everything changed. In complete darkness, Michael unleashed something that wasn't quite human. The engineers couldn't see him, but they could feel something in that room that made their blood run cold. Bruce Swedien knew he was witnessing history. He saved that take. What you're about to hear will explain why that decision haunts him still. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958, in the industrial town of Gary, Indiana. He was the 8th child in a family of 10, squeezed into a tiny 2-bedroom house on Jackson Street. His father, Joseph, worked long hours at a steel mill, and his mother, Catherine, took on part-time work at Sears while managing the home. They barely had enough space to sleep, and several siblings often had to share beds. The house was always loud and crowded, and the air smelled of struggle. Catherine had once dreamed of singing country music and could play the clarinet, cello, and piano. Joseph, a former boxer, had played guitar in a local band called the Falcons. Even as a toddler, something about Michael was different. At just 4 years old, he would imitate James Brown's moves perfectly, spinning across the living room floor while family members stopped what they were doing just to watch. He didn't just dance, he moved like he was born on a stage. His voice stunned everyone. He could memorize songs after hearing them once, and hit notes that made even his older siblings stare in disbelief. He had a gift for rhythm and performed with a kind of magic that felt years beyond his age. By the time he turned 5, he was already leaving entire classrooms speechless during school performances, standing confidently in front of crowds like it was the most natural thing in the world. But behind those early performances was a darker reality. Michael's home was filled with fear. Joseph Jackson had a terrible temper. During arguments with Catherine, he would throw furniture while the children hid in corners. That fear never really left Michael. His father's abuse went beyond shouting. He exposed his sons to adult environments no child should have seen, dragging them into strip clubs and showing them things that shattered their innocence. Michael once admitted that just the sight of his father made him so sick with anxiety, he would vomit. That fear would follow him for decades. His body image issues, his discomfort with intimacy, his deep loneliness, all of it started here, in the shadows of that tiny house. When Michael was just 6 years old, he joined his brothers on stage in local talent shows. At Mr. Lucky's Club in 1964, he sang "Climb Every Mountain" from The Sound of Music and left a room full of adults stunned. No one could believe such control and emotion was coming from a 6-year-old. Soon, he became more than just another sibling in the group. He was the one audiences came to see. He played congas and tambourine and quickly mastered every choreographed move the family rehearsed. Club owners began specifically requesting the Jackson brothers just to see Michael. He had the kind of connection with audiences that couldn't be taught. People didn't just watch him, they were drawn to him. But the price of that talent was brutal. Joseph turned their rehearsals into military drills. He would sit with a belt in his hand, watching closely for even the smallest mistake. Michael remembered being hit with belts, cords, even being held upside down as punishment. Some punishments were worse. Michael once said Joseph would strip him, apply oil to his skin, and then beat him, as if trying to make the pain worse on purpose. The children rehearsed for hours without rest. The cost of perfection was deep trauma. Then came the day everything changed. On July 23, 1968, the brothers walked into Motown's headquarters in Detroit. Bobby Taylor had seen them perform in Chicago and arranged the audition. Berry Gordy had already said no to signing more child acts, but after seeing them perform, he reversed his decision. Just 3 days later, on July 26th, they signed with Motown. At the same time, they were still performing in strip clubs just to survive. Michael was only 10, already living in a grown man's world. The group exploded onto the scene in 1969 with I Want You Back, followed by a string of hits including ABC, The Love You Save, and I'll Be There. They became the first group in history to debut with 4 #1 songs in a row. But while the world cheered, Michael was suffering in silence. Rehearsals became even more intense. His father enforced 18-hour training days and punished any mistake with beatings. Michael said later that his father would tear you up for slipping up in singing or dancing. These weren't rare moments, they were daily life. By 1971, at just 13, Michael had become a global teen idol. But instead of celebrating, he often sat alone in hotel rooms crying. He missed the normal life other kids had. School dances, birthday parties, friendships. While the world saw a superstar with a sparkling smile, inside he was just a boy who felt empty and alone. In 1972, everything shifted again. Motown was clashing with Joseph over creative control, and during this tension, 14-year-old Michael secretly recorded a song called Ben. It was a soft ballad about a pet rat, originally meant for Donny Osmond. The song reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, making Michael the 3rd youngest artist ever to do so. It won a Golden Globe and earned an Oscar nomination. But the victory sparked tension. When the Jackson 5 realized in 1975 that they were only getting 2.7% of their royalties from Motown, they left for Epic Records, which offered 20%. After selling over 60 million records, they held a press conference at the Rainbow Grill in Manhattan to announce their departure. But Motown fought back, sued them, and kept the name Jackson 5. Jermaine stayed behind, having married Berry Gordy's daughter, while Randy replaced him. Legal battles dragged on until March 1976. Meanwhile, Michael's teenage years turned even more painful. His brothers mocked him about his nose and acne, calling him Big Nose, and making fun of his looks as his body changed. It wasn't just teasing, it was constant, and it hurt. That, combined with the pressure from his father, made Michael deeply insecure about his appearance. He later admitted that part of his decision to get plastic surgery was to erase the features he shared with Joseph. The emotional scars ran deep. In 1979, at just 21, Michael broke his nose during a dance rehearsal. The accident required surgery, and it became the moment that started his long journey into cosmetic procedures. His first rhinoplasty didn't go well. He struggled to breathe and was unhappy with the results, leading to more surgeries in 1981 and again in 1983. Each time he tried to fix one thing, it led to something else. That same year, his life changed again when he worked with Quincy Jones on The Wiz, playing the Scarecrow. Critics dismissed the film but praised Michael's acting. It was here that his partnership with Quincy Jones began. Despite his record label saying no, Michael pushed for Jones to produce his next album. The result was Off the Wall, released in 1979, with songs like Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, which Michael wrote himself. The album changed the sound of pop forever. The image on the cover, with Michael in a tuxedo and sparkling socks, became iconic. The tuxedo was the label's idea. The socks? That was all Michael. At age 20, he finally moved out of his family home and into his own place in Beverly Hills. He wanted independence, freedom from Joseph's control. In one odd but telling detail, Michael adopted a pet rat and named it Ben, just like his earlier hit. He even bred rats and carried them in his pockets. It was strange to others, but it made sense to him. The rats were misunderstood, just like he felt he was. That same year, the Jacksons finally gained full creative control with their album, Destiny. Michael co-wrote Shake Your Body, Down to the Ground, with Randy, which became a top 10 hit in early 1979. It marked a turning point. He was no longer just the lead singer of a group. He was beginning to take full control of his voice, his art, and his identity. In early 1982, Michael Jackson was already one of the most famous young artists in the world, but fame came with shadows. One of them followed him into the studio and shaped one of his most iconic songs. A woman had falsely claimed he was the father of her child, and it hit him hard. He couldn't stop thinking about it, and that obsession poured straight into Billie Jean. He didn't just want to tell his side of the story. He wanted every sound to match the intensity of his emotions. With Quincy Jones by his side, he dove into the creation of the Thriller album, pushing for the most advanced 24-track mixing tech of the time. Every beat, every layer, every breath had to be perfect. He began recording at Westlake Studios in Los Angeles that April, working for hours and hours. Even other songs like Wanna Be Startin' Something carried that same anxious energy. Then came the moment that changed everything. On December 2, 1983, the music video for Thriller dropped like a bomb. It cost $500,000 to make, which was unheard of. It was more like a short film than a music video, with zombies, graveyards, and dance moves that would define a generation. But not everyone loved it. Michael's religious community, the Jehovah's Witnesses, were furious. They said it promoted evil and demons. They told him to destroy it. He almost did. But his assistant stopped him and suggested adding a disclaimer to explain that the video didn't reflect his personal beliefs. Michael even wrote a public apology in the Awake magazine, promising never to do anything like that again. Despite the video's success, that moment cracked something inside him, and by 1987, he had drifted away from the church entirely. 1 month after that video came a fire. On January 27, 1984, during a Pepsi commercial shoot at the Shrine Auditorium, Michael's hair caught on fire from a mistimed pyrotechnic blast. He didn't stop dancing. He didn't even realize he was burning until others rushed in to put out the flames. He ended up with serious burns to his scalp, and the pain never really went away. That day marked the beginning of a new struggle, an addiction to painkillers that would follow him for the rest of his life. Pepsi paid him $1.5 million in a settlement, and he donated it to a burn center, which was later named after him. Strangely, he signed a new $10 million deal with Pepsi later on, even though the accident had changed his life forever. 1 month after the fire, on February 28, 1984, he walked into the Grammy Awards and made history. 8 wins in one night. Thriller wasn't just a hit, it had taken over the world. One of the album's biggest tracks, Beat It, featured a secret weapon, Eddie Van Halen. The rock guitarist recorded his iconic solo for free, under 2 conditions. No credit, no mention to his bandmates. He thought Quincy Jones was prank calling him at first. During recording, the studio speakers literally caught fire from the volume. The song ended up outperforming Van Halen's own 1984 album, and it helped blur the lines between rock and pop. But even in the middle of all this, the rumors started to swirl. Stories about Michael sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber or trying to stop aging were everywhere. None of it was true, but the world was already creating a version of him that didn't exist. As sales exploded, so did the pressure. Thriller crossed 67 million copies sold by 1984, a record that no one had ever come close to. It stayed at number 1 for 37 non-consecutive weeks. But all that success came with crushing loneliness. He bought a chimp named Bubbles from a research lab in Texas. Bubbles became more than a pet. He was someone Michael could talk to, someone who didn't judge or twist his words. The media latched onto the story and turned it into a joke. They called him Wacko Jacko, a nickname he hated. Wild rumors followed. Bubbles as Elizabeth Taylor's ring bearer, Prince using mind tricks to make the chimp go crazy. His manager tried to explain it, but no one cared. The world wasn't listening to the music anymore. They were too busy watching the circus. By 1987, Michael wanted control. On his next album, Bad, he wrote 9 of the 11 songs himself. People thought Man in the Mirror came from his own humanitarian beliefs, but the truth was different. It was written by Sieda Garrett and Glenn Ballard after Quincy Jones challenged a group of writers to create hits for Michael. Still, the passion was real. Michael would lock himself in the studio for 48 hours at a time, barely eating, barely sleeping. That year, he planned to do a duet with Prince for the title track, Bad. But the collaboration never happened. One of the songs, Speed Demon, was inspired by something simple, a traffic ticket that made him late for a session. He turned his frustration into music, proving again that nothing was wasted in his world. Every moment could become a melody. The Bad Tour took that energy and turned it into a global event. From 1987 to 1989, it broke every record in sight. It made $125 million and became the second highest-grossing tour of the decade. He performed 123 shows across 15 countries, playing for 4.4 million fans. In Japan, he played to crowds of 135,000 people for 3 nights straight, each night earning over $52 million. But behind the scenes, things were darker. Michael was becoming more paranoid, more withdrawn. This was his first ever solo tour, despite already being one of the most famous people alive. He was 29. Pepsi sponsored the tour, but the bond between them was already beginning to crack. The tour ended with 2 Guinness records, and Michael was now officially the king of pop. But the price was rising. Then came the moment that would follow him forever. In August 1993, during his Dangerous tour, Michael was accused of sexually abusing a 13-year-old boy named Jordan Chandler. The boy's father, Evan Chandler, had reportedly given him a drug during a dental procedure, and the accusation came while the boy was under its influence. Michael had met the family years earlier, after renting a car from Jordan's stepfather. At first, Chandler tried to settle the matter quietly by demanding money. When that failed, the police got involved. Jackson's home was raided. His body searched. The stress broke him. On November 11th, he canceled the rest of his tour, citing addiction to painkillers. The case ended in early 1994 with a $23 million settlement, but Michael's team insisted it was not an admission of guilt. The criminal investigation was closed later that year when the Chandlers stopped cooperating, but the damage was done. 2 years earlier, in November 1991, Michael had released the music video for Black or White. It aired on MTV, BET, and Fox all at once, with 500 million people watching. The video started with a message of unity, but then took a turn. In a shocking 4-minute sequence, Michael transformed into a panther and performed a dance that included violent smashing of cars and windows. He even simulated sexual gestures. The backlash was immediate. Entertainment Weekly called it a nightmare. Within 2 days, Michael apologized publicly. Later, he released a new version of the video that included racist graffiti on the windows he smashed, trying to reframe the destruction as a protest. But even before that, the BBC had already censored parts of it. Once again, Michael's message was lost in the noise. In 1993, he tried to take back the narrative. On February 10th, he sat down with Oprah Winfrey for an interview that would become the most watched in American television history, drawing 90 million viewers. For the first time, he publicly revealed that he had vitiligo, a disease that destroys skin pigment. His doctor confirmed it, explaining the symptoms had begun years earlier. Michael told Oprah he used makeup to even out his skin tone, something common for people with vitiligo. But the tabloids weren't satisfied. They had spent over a decade claiming he was bleaching his skin to become white. During the interview, he joked about the strangest rumors, like owning the Elephant Man's bones, asking, "Where am I gonna put some bones?" He ended the talk by saying, "I am proud to be a Black American." But the stories never stopped. In 1995, something truly haunting happened. Michael was recording Earth Song, a piece he had started writing in 1988 under the title, "What About Us?" The song had gone through different producers, changes, and years of rewrites. But one night in the studio, something strange happened. He asked to record the final vocals in complete darkness. The room went black. No one could see him. But when he started singing, the sound that came out was so raw and powerful that the engineers felt their skin crawl. Bruce Swedien, his trusted sound engineer, was there. He chose a special microphone that night, a vintage Telefunken U47 tube mic he had owned since he married his wife. Michael's voice filled the room like a force of nature. It wasn't just music anymore. It was pain, prophecy, and something bigger than either of them. That take became the version millions would hear. Swedien later said, "If you want to feel it fully, sit in the dark, turn it up, and don't speak. Just listen." One day before Michael Jackson's much-hyped album History hit stores in 1995, a storm exploded. The New York Times ran a piece saying one of the songs, "They Don't Care About Us," had anti-Semitic lyrics. It wasn't subtle. Jackson had sung lines like, "Jew me, sue me, everybody do me, kick me, kike me," and Jewish communities reacted instantly. 2 million albums had already shipped by the time the backlash began. Jackson at first tried to defend the lyrics, saying the words were meant to show how prejudice feels, not to spread it. But the pressure kept growing. News outlets called him out. Critics didn't hold back. A week later, Jackson gave in and re-recorded the vocals, muting the slurs with noise instead of replacing them. By then, the damage was done. The scandal took over the headlines and cast a heavy shadow over the album's release. 7 years later, he found himself on a hotel balcony in Berlin, holding his baby boy in one arm and waving to fans. For a moment, they cheered until they saw what he was doing. Jackson lifted the 9-month-old infant over the rail, just dangling there with nothing but a thin blanket covering his face. Cameras flashed. Gasps rose from the crowd. In seconds, the video was everywhere. Jackson later said he got caught up in the moment, but even close friends were stunned. One called it silly. Another said it was unbelievable. Ironically, Jackson was in Berlin that week to receive an award for helping children. By 2001, Jackson was trying to make a comeback. He poured everything into an album called Invincible. He worked in expensive studios, hired the best producers, recorded around 50 songs, and chose just 15 for release. It cost $30 million to make, the most expensive album ever at that point, but it flopped. Jackson refused to tour in the US, and Sony, the label behind it, didn't push it hard enough. Fans bought it, but not in the numbers they once had. Tensions between Jackson and Sony boiled over. In 2002, just months after Invincible hit shelves, he stood at a podium in Harlem and called Sony's CEO Tommy Mottola a racist and a devil. He said Mottola used racial slurs and sabotaged black artists. Even Al Sharpton, who hosted the event, was stunned. Other artists defended Mottola. Jackson was becoming more isolated, but his troubles didn't stop there. In 2005, the full weight of his past, his health, and his choices crashed down. That year, Jackson's drug addiction, particularly to painkillers like Demerol and OxyContin, became public. It had started back in 1984, after his scalp was badly burned during a Pepsi commercial shoot. The pain never fully went away, and neither did the medication. Friends tried to intervene in 2003, but by then, Jackson was locked into plans for a world tour. He even recorded a song called Morphine in 1997, a haunting track about his dependence. By 2005, he wasn't performing anymore. He was a full-time father, but his music career had flatlined. Rewind to 1994, and another moment that stunned the world. Jackson married Lisa Marie Presley. The wedding was held in secret, in the Dominican Republic, and lasted just 15 minutes. It was strange from the start. Presley had divorced her first husband less than 3 weeks earlier, and soon after the ceremony, Jackson reportedly called a friend in a panic asking for sex advice. The timing of the marriage raised eyebrows. It happened while Jackson was under fire from child molestation allegations. The public kiss they shared at the MTV Awards that year felt forced. Presley's mother believed the whole thing was a staged distraction. The marriage ended in 1996, just 18 months later. That same year, Jackson married again, this time to Debbie Rowe, a nurse from his dermatologist's office. She would become the mother of 2 of his children, but they never lived together. Rowe later received over $8 million in a divorce settlement and gave up all parental rights. Court records revealed Jackson had artificially inseminated her. Tabloids called it a baby deal. Even Jackson's brother Jermaine later said the children were purchased and that the arrangement felt like a black market transaction. Jackson's mother reportedly pushed him to marry, not wanting him to have children outside wedlock, like his own father had. In 2002, a third child was born, nicknamed Blanket. This time, Jackson used an anonymous surrogate. He admitted in a documentary that he didn't know the woman, and she didn't know him. The baby's birth certificate listed no mother. Rumors claimed a Mexican nurse named Helena was involved, but Jackson never confirmed anything. Years later, during a court case, Jackson's mother fought to block any testimony about how the child was conceived. It only deepened the mystery. But nothing defined Jackson's decline more than the place he once called paradise. Neverland Ranch was supposed to be a dream. He bought it in 1987 for $19.5 million and built a private zoo, amusement park, and train station on its 2,800 acres. For years, it was his safe haven. But after the first child abuse allegations, Neverland became the center of scandal. He was accused of sleeping in the same bed as young visitors. He called them innocent sleepovers. The world didn't believe him. In 2006, he shut the place down. Staff went unpaid, animals vanished, and insurance lapsed. A private firm took control of the property in 2008, and by 2020, it sold for just $22 million, a fraction of what it once symbolized. In 2003, everything changed. A documentary called Living with Michael Jackson aired, showing him holding hands with a 13-year-old cancer survivor named Gavin Arvizo. Jackson openly said he shared his bed with children, calling it the most loving thing to do. The world didn't see it that way. Within weeks, Gavin accused Jackson of molestation. Prosecutors launched a full investigation. The timing was strange. The alleged abuse happened right after the documentary aired, when Jackson was being watched by everyone. Still, the accusations stuck. They led to a courtroom showdown in 2005. The trial lasted 4 months. Over 140 witnesses were called. The stories were messy, emotional, and contradictory. Some said Jackson had molested them. Others, like Macaulay Culkin, denied anything ever happened. The turning point came when Gavin's mother testified. She rambled. She contradicted herself. The jury stopped believing her. On June 13, 2005, Jackson was found not guilty on all 14 charges. but the damage to his name couldn't be undone. Financially, he was drowning. By 2005, he owed $415 million. He was spending up to $30 million more per year than he earned. The biggest threat came from loans secured by his most valuable asset, a 50% stake in the Beatles' catalog, which he had bought in 1985 for $47.5 million. As he defaulted, banks sold his debt to private firms. The Beatles' rights were in danger. Jackson was spending heavily on toys, luxuries, and a massive entourage. One $200 million loan came due right after his trial ended. After the verdict, Jackson fled to Bahrain. He lived there from 2005 to 2006, hosted by a royal family. The sheikh who took him in paid for everything: a mansion, a recording studio, even $250,000 for Christmas parties. But things fell apart again. Jackson was supposed to deliver a new album, an autobiography, and a stage show. He didn't. The sheikh sued him for $7 million. Jackson claimed the money had been gifts, not loans. They settled quietly in 2008, just before Jackson was due to testify in London. In 2009, he tried to rise again. On March 5th, he stood on stage in London and announced his return. This Is It would be a series of concerts at the O2 Arena. The response was massive. Tickets sold out in hours. 2 million people tried to get in. Rehearsals started in April. He moved between studios and venues, eventually ending up at the Staples Center in Los Angeles. On June 24th, he gave his final performance, rehearsing Earth Song and Thriller until midnight. He looked thin but focused. He didn't know it would be his last night on stage. The next day, June 25, 2009, Michael Jackson was gone. His doctor, Conrad Murray, had given him propofol to help him sleep. Murray left the room for a few minutes. When he came back, Jackson wasn't breathing. He waited 82 minutes before calling for help. He didn't tell paramedics about the drugs. When the autopsy came in, it confirmed what many feared. Jackson had died from acute propofol poisoning. Murray, who wasn't trained in anesthesiology, had used the drug recklessly. In 2011, he was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and sentenced to 4 years in prison.